The following program will make you want to grow things and experience new and wonderful dreams about your plants, garden, and garden design. Listener participation is always strongly advised. Good evening and welcome to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101. To contact us live this evening, send us an email. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Down the Garden Path, where each week we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we, along with our guests, want to help you make it happen. I'm Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down to Earth Landscapes for the past 11 years. It is currently a design-only business here east of the GTA. And with me is Matthew Dressing, my co-host Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matthew.
Thanks, Joanne. Welcome, Joanne, and welcome, everyone. I'm Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer and owner of Natural Affinity Designs. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the Eastern GTA. And just like Joanne said, we enjoy doing Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. And as always, we welcome your questions via social media, emails, and unfortunately not callers because we have a call-in guest.
That's right.
This evening. So thanks, everyone, for joining us down the garden path.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm very excited to talk about our guest today. We both, Matthew and I, are sitting here with this beautiful book in front of us. And it is called Orchestra in My Garden, Lessons Learned from Digging Deep, which I think is a great title. So I wanted to share with you about our guest and author, Linda Brooks. Linda grew up in a large musical family on a third-generation potato farm outside of Perth, Andover, New Brunswick. So fellow Canadian. Mm-hmm. She is an ECMA-nominated musician, and in addition to this, current double album has written and released 4 albums to date, 2 of which were recorded in Nashville. Linda has always felt a connection with nature, and while creating this book, realized that her garden was gifting her with the wisdom and artistic inspiration to answer some of life's most difficult questions. In Orchestra in My Garden, she shares lessons learned through her journey of gardening, motherhood, and songwriting. She lives in the charming seaside town of Bedford, Nova Scotia, with her husband Mike, sons Jack and Ben, and golden retriever Brady. Welcome to the show, Linda.
Thank you so much.
We're so excited to talk to you about your book. It is beautiful. We thought we'd start off with Matthew's going to just cover up the description of your book so we can let our listeners know more about it.
Yeah. So the book, Orchestra in My Garden, Lessons Learned from Digging Deep, is an immersive and deeply moving book from singer-songwriter, mother, gardener, and now author, Linda Brooks. In this stunning offering, Linda brings together 17 personal essays on the garden as a metaphor for life, 22 beautiful new songs as a downloadable accompaniment, and a selection of captivating photos from her own evolving garden. And the book is absolutely stunning.
Yes.
I that was going to be one of my questions. Are all the photos from your own garden?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They are all from my own garden. I think there is one shot in the book that is from a photography shoot in California, and it sort of relates to the experience I had there meeting some other types of artists. Because I think of gardeners as artists.
Yes,
and,
thank you.
And so that would be the only shot that isn't, but otherwise all of them are from my garden over a variety of seasons, over a couple of years, actually.
Wonderful, wonderful.
The book and the photography are fantastic. And so for tonight, Linda has generously given us a copy of Orchestra in My Garden. So if you're listening now, write in, say hello to Linda. Perhaps
Send a
you're
question,
a fan.
yeah.
Send a question. Perhaps you're a fan. You've heard some of her music. Say hello. And everyone who writes in will be entered into a draw to win a beautiful copy of this book. It's absolutely stunning. I love the photography in it. I was blown away, actually.
Oh, thank you so much.
It would have made an amazing. I wish we'd done the show sooner because it would have made an amazing Mother's Day gift. So
Well,
yes.
And it did, I think, get to a lot of mothers for Mother's Day.
Oh,
So
good.
it did. But yes, it's just the way that the timing worked out. But we definitely did manage to get a good amount of press about it leading up to Mother's Day, so that people could take advantage of that. But
excellent.
I think going forward, as we're just, to me, garden season sort of starts a little bit then, but it really continues on. Like, we're just really getting into it now. So this is actually perfect timing, because it'll be available to people who are just getting that itch to be out in the garden again.
Absolutely, and I'm sure there's birthdays and other things coming up. So
Yes,
definitely it would make a lovely gift.
Thank you.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we have our first question, and I'm guessing, Linda, you might get asked this a few times.
Okay.
And this is Joyce, and she's writing in to ask if you are related to Garth Brooks.
Oh, my goodness. Well, funny story. I am not related to Garth Brooks. However, when I was in Nashville working my past 2 albums prior to this one, I did actually work with someone who works closely with Garth Brooks. So
there you go.
There was one degree of separation. It was not familial separation, but my producer and guitarist on on the last 2 albums, is a gentleman named Chris Lusinger, who has played guitar on every Garth Brooks album that he's ever made.
Excellent. Well, there you go, Joyce. So 1 degree of separation.
Yeah, so I did tell him to say hello to Uncle Garth for me.
Oh. That's great. That's great. So as a musician, do you want to just tell us how you came up with the idea of tying the music in with a book? Have you always wanted to write a book?
Well, I think that somewhere in the back of my mind there was an idea that I might someday write a book, but I really didn't have a fix on what that would be about, or how it would, what it would look like. Basically, what was happening was that I was sort of in between albums, and it's actually a great time creatively, because there's not a lot of pressure in that sort of moment. So I was noticing a trend that when I was in the garden, I would come in and feel quite inspired. I think it's almost like a form of meditation for me, and I think for a lot of people, you can probably relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would come in and just be so creatively inspired. So I started noticing that was happening. And at around the same time, I had begun writing essays. I'd actually written a few over the years, just as an expression of thoughts I would have, or stories that I wanted to sort of collect and tell. But at this particular time, about 4 years ago, there was sort of, I guess, an intersection or a nexus of a period of time where I was in the garden and would really start to see these correlations between nature and how plants interact and solve issues between them, and how the garden solves issues, and how those things could be applied to human interaction. I just started seeing a lot of those similarities, so I started cataloging those, really without the idea that I was writing a book. It was really just to kind of capture those little bits of wisdom that I felt were being kind of delivered to me when I was out there. And then one day, after about 3 or 4 essays and a few new songs, I was kind of going back between the piano and the computer, and I kind of had one of those moments of, oh my goodness, this song is very similar in theme to what I just discovered in the garden, this little bit of wisdom that I wanted to write about. so it sort of happened, just on its own, and I
Yeah.
feel like it just sort of found me rather than me finding it.
Excellent. Well, that's great. It's like it just kind of grew, haha, no pun
Right.
intended, but it grew out of your time in the garden.
The metaphors are endless.
Yes, for
They
sure.
are.
We could keep going, couldn't we?
Yes, they are. It did absolutely grow out of my garden. I grew from being a gardener. My dad had told me many years ago, as a third generation farmer, he had quite a strong connection to nature, and I always say, really, as a farmer, he was a gardener.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So he definitely had a strong connection and just such a respect for nature, and I think he instilled that in all of us, and my mom as well, who is an avid gardener. But yeah, I think that one thing stood out, that my father, who is no longer with us, but had left me these little bits of wisdom, and this one phrase kept coming back to me, that every problem you need to solve, or every question you have in life, can be solved by observing nature.
Mm.
And I don't think I fully understood that at a younger age,
Mm-hmm.
what the meaning of that was. But as I began to spend more time in my garden and just really kind of, I think, sink away from the minutia of life and really relax out there, I could just see things happening that really became emblematic of how one might solve a certain problem in life.
Wow. And do you think, I know you mentioned about gardening as a way to reconnect with nature as a busy mom as well.
Yes,
And you and
definitely.
I was saying to you in email that, we're about similar age. We both have sons. We both have a corner lot. How's that for lots in common?
We do.
But I think as we probably gardened, both of us haphazardly when the kids were younger, but now as they got older and you could spend a bit more uninterrupted time.
Right.
Not refereeing and not getting hit in the head with a ball.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely, Joanne. I mean, I remember times when I would set a blanket out, with a whole lot of Lego, and just so that I could get a couple of, maybe an hour in the garden,
Yeah.
uninterrupted. And, it's really funny because, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, I think it definitely is a little bit more of trying to capture those moments when your children are young, because you don't have those long stretches in the garden. And it certainly was a time, too, when my children were young, that it was harder to kind of pursue my music career and be out on the road, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that really my garden kind of became, I think, that creative outlet for me during that time. And I think motherhood, it's very challenging, obviously. It's the most wonderful thing, but also very personally challenging at times in terms of fitting in the things that we love and not losing touch with those. But I find it very interesting that now it's that garden that I kind of retreated to as a creative outlet that really brought me full circle to almost like the highest level of creativity so far that I've experienced in my life.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And I can only imagine if it was hard for me to get in my garden when my kids were young, how you managed a music career.
Right. Well, it was tricky. I really didn't. I kind of stepped back a little bit for a while. I never stopped writing, so I did stay in touch with that part of my musicianship, I guess, the songwriting portion. But yeah, it was a little tricky, absolutely. And I think a lot of women can identify with that, trying to balance all those things at the same time. But I would say that my boys they're now 18 and 20, and they have just begun to show their own sort of interest in spending time with me in the garden.
Oh.
And that's been really kind of a remarkable thing,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think as teenagers they were always thrilled when I asked them to pick up the wheelbarrow.
No. Yes, or to dig out the dead plant, right?
Right. Maybe yours were, but mine weren't.
No. Mine were not.
But I think they've kind of, I think that because they've been exposed to it and have seen, what can come of kind of, just sort of like a commitment, I guess, to just pushing that wheel a little bit more forward each time you go out there. They now sort of see the fruits of all those labors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has inspired them in their own lives a little bit to understand that, that good things sometimes take time, and you have to commit yourself to the, to the exercise of doing it to, get good at it, because
Right.
the mistakes are part of that experience. and I'm happy to share those. And I talk about those in the book because I really don't want people thinking that. I think you probably experienced this before too, where people think that when you've presented something or you've got sort of any kind of expertise in the gardening world that you haven't also experienced your own series of mistakes to get to the point where you have got that knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It takes a lot. Yeah, it takes a lot of work to have a good garden. A lot of mistakes happen, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, it takes a lot of mistakes to get good at something.
That's right.
Yeah.
So did your music career happen before you have children, or did you juggle, like you said, you did juggle a little bit?
I did. It actually did start before I had children. But not all. Well, I had been singing and performing most of my life. So I had grown up on this potato farm, but I came from a very musical family. So that was just kind of part of our experience growing up, that there was always music in the house, and we all played instruments and that sort of thing. But definitely in my 20s, I was pursuing career as a musician and was put out my first album then. And then as I began to transition, kind of got married in around 30 and transitioned into my life with my children, I did sort of take that step back just from the performance aspect of it, but I always kept writing and evolving, and then came back and have done 3 albums, I guess, since once the kids were old enough, that I felt like I could travel a little bit, and it might work with the balance with my husband and his work. I got back to it again and have been at it quite seriously again for the last 10 years.
Oh, wonderful.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Gail writes in. She says, hello, very interesting cross-genre show. And she asks, what instruments do you play, Linda? And then where can we get your songs as well?
Okay, great. Well, the instruments that I play are piano and clarinet. So I played all the piano on the current album, and there's a little bit of clarinet that makes an appearance, so I did dig out my high school clarinet.
Oh, wow.
And kind of, dusted it off and reminded myself that, I could do that if I put a little more effort into kind of bringing myself, up to speed on that. The album has actually is part of the book. So currently, this is so intertwined with the book, and as you go through each essay, there is actually a title of a companion song that is thematically linked to that essay. So right now, the album is currently available by buying the book.
Excellent.
So you get to the end of the book, and there's a download code. It's very easy to use, and you just put it into your computer at home, and it gives you a free download of all 22 original songs, which were written specifically for this project.
That's very cool. And what about your past albums?
Well, my past albums are all available on iTunes, actually. So I think my very first one may not be. We'll have to address that. The rest of them are on there and under Linda Brooks. And yeah, they're available. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of them. And then this current one, of course, right now is exclusive to the book.
Excellent.
So it's very integrated, and we just felt like that was important to kind of maintain that interaction of those two things, and perhaps eventually it'll release on its own musically, but it's such a, because you see the book, that it's such a part of what's happening in the storytelling in the book. That's sort of where it belongs.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it melds really well, and I think that's why I asked that question early on, was that just the concept of it was just a great idea.
Well, thank you so much, and I wish I could say I had, this stroke of marketing genius that just overcame me, but to be honest with you, it really felt as though, even in the doing of it, it really felt as though I was a conduit for something that needed to be expressed or wanted to be expressed creatively. And I say that because I've never had songs coming at me so furiously, just coming at me so quickly. I would actually, the album was actually recorded in my living room. I have a piano, and we brought recording equipment in, and I have sort of high ceilings in my living room, so it's a good acoustic environment. And we brought a studio in, basically, and created it because I felt so strongly that those songs had evolved from my garden, and I had sat at that very piano to write those all, and sat nearby to write all the essays, that I just really felt like I don't think I can go to a studio outside of here where I don't have that same connection and stay kind of true to everything that that's being offered here. So we did sort of create for a period of time a studio around my living room, and outside the windows I could see my garden in bloom as we were recording, except in the winter, of course. We had a few snow plows that interfered with the recording process.
Yeah, there's always something, right? If it was the summer, it would have been lawnmowers and leaf blowers, right?
That's right, yeah. But it was a really interesting experience, and I feel like it was, a friend of mine who worked on the project said, I feel that this is the most relaxed I've ever heard you as a singer, and I really think it is a product of being not on a clock like you are in a traditional studio setting,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And B, just being kind of surrounded by all the things that music had grown out of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the comfort of your own home too.
Yes. Yeah, that's a big factor, absolutely.
You know.
I mean, I'm sure my family was really happy when it was wrapped up because there were a lot of, there was a lot of shushing going on.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. When's Mom going to be done this album?
That's
Exactly.
right.
A little bit of banishment to the basement occasionally.
Yes.
They've been extremely good sports about it, and I think they just believed in what I was doing, so they were incredibly supportive.
Oh, wonderful.
That's
wonderful.
amazing. So, just for the listeners who are just tuning in, we've got Linda Brooks. She's talking her new garden, Orchestra in My Garden, singer, songwriter, author, joining us. We also have a copy of her latest book, which is beautifully intertwined with her latest album, and collections of essays in the book. If you'd like a chance to win the book, or win a free copy of the book, write in, ask Linda a question, say hi, and just kind of interact with us. And you can reach us at instudio101@gmail.com. Going right to a question, Paul writes in, even though Linda seems to love both music and gardening, does she have a favorite?
Uh-oh. Wow. That's a really tough question. That's almost like being asked which child you favor.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, isn't it?
Kind of like that. Oh, my goodness. Well, gosh, I would have to say that the impetus for this project, I have a passion for music, and I don't think that will ever leave me. It's just kind of a part of who I am. And of my DNA with my family, and I think that the gardening is too. So I have a hard time answering that question, especially on this project.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that though I definitely kind of, certainly go to a very almost spiritual place, when I'm writing. You go into a zone, I guess. Mm-hmm. There is something about that experience with the garden that it's hard to find anywhere else, really. I think that it has taught me so many lessons over the years and been such a place of refuge for me when I've been going through difficult things. And so I would have to say that I have a passion for music and a passion for gardening both, but the music, I think, over the last several years has really grown out of and been inspired by the place the garden takes me to. So I guess I have to acknowledge the importance of the garden in my life.
Right. But I can definitely see the analogy of, just like your children, right? It's difficult to separate them and to
tough.
choose. Yeah.
Really tough to separate them. And it's so interesting because I really didn't see this coming. I really was just doing these things because I had a passion for both of them.
Right.
And this beautiful moment of intersection between them was as much a surprise to me as anyone.
Oh, very cool.
And I just decided to embrace it and go with it.
Yeah.
It kind of took me over. There were days when I was preparing for a session that evening, and my producer would be coming at around 5 o'clock to start recording, and I would actually get up that morning to prepare and start writing a new song because it was just pouring out of me. And by the time he got there, I had just finished a new song and hadn't prepared at all for the evening session.
Oh, gosh.
But I really, for the first time in my life, I just kind of let go of all of those boundaries of time and space and just kind of let it, it just felt like something was kind of channeling through me almost, and my job was to just not get in the way of that.
Well, excellent.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the boys, your sons, are taking a bit of interest in gardening. How about music? Are they musically?
Well, they are so interesting. They are. For a long time in their lives, I don't think it was I think when you're surrounded by it sometimes,
Yeah.
it's sort of like, you know. But so interesting because my 18-year-old boy in the last year who had quit piano lessons coincidentally as a child because he said he was not a piano player. He's my artist and he paints and sculpts. But he pursued that for a long time. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, he a lot in the last year, but about a couple of years ago, he started expressing an interest in the piano and showing up at my piano and sort of just playing around. And now is actually considering doing an album of his own at some point. Has written quite a few songs and is really sort of developing just his own passion for that, which is really interesting because my husband and I had a conversation when they were little that he felt I shouldn't let them quit piano lessons.
Right.
And I said, look, I've gone through this, and I had siblings who were forced at one point to do it, and I wasn't. And it was the person who I think it's one of those things that you really have to want it yourself to get good at it and work at it, like anything.
Yeah.
So if you love something, you'll be better at it because you'll show up more often to work at it.
Yeah.
So I just kind of left it alone, and he did come back to it. And just recently, my older son, who's a baseball player, an athlete down in the States going to school currently in upstate New York.
Oh, no, Linda, another thing we have in common. My
you're
son,
kidding.
yeah, my son graduated from upstate New York, yeah.
You are kidding me.
Playing baseball.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my goodness, Linda.
Wow, we're sisters from another mister.
I think we are. I think we're going to have to do like a Skype coffee at some point.
I think you're right about
what
that.
school?
Well,
What school?
he just asked me if he could go out and get a guitar. And I thought, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
So I think that they both have other things that they have passion for, but maybe just the exposure to it. And I think we all have to come to things in our own time. If it's right there for you, sometimes it's too, I don't know, it's too obvious or too apparent. And once you kind of get out on your own, you realize that maybe you do kind of miss those things, or I think for him, he's kind of missing having music around.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So
Gary
Gary was wondering which school, because Gary's actually from upstate New York.
He's at Elmira College in upstate New York.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my son went to he went to Corning, and then he went to Brockport.
Oh my goodness, yeah, I know those names.
But Corning and Elmira are right next to each other.
They are.
There's Corning and Elmira, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yep, that's right. Yep. So, yeah, and this will be the first summer that he's going to play there, not at Elmira, but at a neighboring, I think it's called, oh my goodness, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
But he's going to be going about an hour away and playing with the summer team.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be the first summer that we don't have him home.
Wow.
So it's going to be very interesting.
Very interesting.
Also because he does a lot of mulching for me in my garden now. He's very big and strong. So that's not the main reason, of course.
No, for sure. Well, my baseball player is unfortunately ghastly allergic to mulch, so he just you say the word mulch and he starts sneezing. So yeah, so he's not a lot of help.
Oh gosh, are you sure that's legit?
Yeah, I've heard him up. I didn't think so, but then the one time he was up all night sneezing and stuff, I kind of caved and thought, yeah, I guess he's right.
That's a hard thing for a gardener's son.
Yeah, it is, totally. Yeah. It is. So anyway, oh my goodness. Well, we're going to have to. So we do have another question. Yeah, to be continued for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have another question. Ruth writes in, what is Linda's website? Oh. And did she ever work with anyone famous?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my website, I'm happy to give you, is very easy because it's basically the same as the title of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So it's www.orchestrainmygarden.com. And when you go on there, there's always an up-to-date list of upcoming events and appearances and interviews, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, as you enter the main page, there's a video that was done sort of chronicling the project as it unfolded.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's kind of a nice little added thing for people who are interested in the book.
Very cool.
And what was the other question?
Just have you worked with anyone famous?
Oh, gosh. Musically?
Yeah. Yes. So much pressure.
I've worked with some people who have worked with some people who are famous.
There you go.
I mean, well, it depends on how you, I think of some really great Canadian musicians who are to me famous.
Yes, absolutely.
I've certainly I've been on some shows years ago. Holly Cole was in Halifax to do an appearance, and I'm not sure if her background singers couldn't make it or she just planned not to. It was kind of I think a short notice thing, and so I was asked to come down and sing backup for her.
Wow.
So that was kind
awesome.
that was really huge for me because I was quite young, fresh in my career at the time, and so that was a really big deal to me, and still is.
Yeah.
And when I'm not worked with exactly, but shared a stage, I just trying to think of. Gosh.
I know it puts you on the spot.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Oh my
you'll think of
goodness,
another
yeah.
one. Yeah.
Well, lots of East Coast musicians certainly
For
I've shared
sure.
stages with.
Yeah.
Lenny Gallant is a friend of mine. We haven't performed together, but we've probably performed in some of the same venues and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's a great East Coast artist. And Matt Anderson, who's a great blues guy from out east and really has now a profile all over the world. And Matt is actually from the same hometown as me.
Oh, wow.
So I think there's maybe, some good DNA all around
Yeah.
there in the musical area.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
Russell DeCarl, I did a show with him at the Marigold in Truro, and he was the main act, and I was the opening act. So
Oh,
that was
there
really
you go.
fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's lots of fun.
I have done a little bit of acting, and I've actually had the occasion to work with a few famous people in that regard. But it's certainly not my main thing. But it's one of those things that certainly on the East Coast, where the industry is a bit smaller, you end up sort of crossing paths a lot. And people who are in the music world often are in the acting world as well. Just the way that it works out.
Yeah.
So I was and did get a chance to meet and was in a miniseries with Rob Lowe. At
Oh,
one time.
yes.
Yeah, I just had a very small part and had an opportunity to meet him. That was kind of fun. And Victor Garber actually worked on a small feature film here in Halifax that I had a part in as well.
Well, there you go. Well, that answers a lot of Ruth's questions. That's for sure.
That was a big deal for me because I'm a big Victor Garber fan. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're excited. Winnie has also written in, and she says, "Hi, Joanne and Matthew. What an interesting show! It sure beats a show on weeds."
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, there you go. And she loves the content this evening. So thank you, Winnie. And I'm sure we could all talk about weeds as well. But
well, it's so interesting that you'd mentioned that, Winnie, because there is an essay in the book called Volunteers, which is really about weeds. So we could go there, but it doesn't sound like Winnie wants us to.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But definitely that essay talks about the things that show up in your garden that you don't plant, that you don't necessarily intend, and how tempting. I'm sure you've experienced this too. It's so tempting in the spring to just go out and pull things that you don't recognize and think, well, I didn't put that there, and that's not part of my plan. And thinking about that one day in the garden really got me thinking about people that show up in your life that you don't necessarily, you haven't asked for or invited, but show up with their own gifts. And sometimes if you just take a moment to consider what is being offered before sort of sending that away, you can really end up with something quite beautiful that adds to the story of your garden, both your outdoor garden and your kind of relationship garden, I guess. So that's one of the beautiful things about weeds, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's a great explanation of how you tied the garden into a song. So we did want to take a moment to play one of your songs. You've been very nice to share a song that you just wrote recently that's not in the book. Did you want to kind of intro it?
Oh, I think that if this is Only Love, it is actually part of the book.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Well, it's so interesting, Joanne, because it is part of the book, but it was written as a result of a trip to Toronto.
Oh, okay.
And that's why it seemed particularly timely. I'll let you explain that. But
well, you shared it with us, saying that you felt it was an appropriate tribute. I know our listeners are probably familiar with the news and the headlines a few weeks ago of the van attacks that took place here in Toronto, which is, both Matthew and I are in the studio is east of the city, so we're kind of outside the city proper. But you felt this book was, just a really nice kind of tribute.
Yeah, it really felt right to me to share it because I really had written that essay and called Only Love, and the song It's Only Love, based on a trip to Toronto, which I talk about in the book. And so much of my gardening and my garden experience has taken place. We live in the suburbs on a corner lot and have, a lot of nature around us. And I grew up in a small town and on a farm.
Yeah.
So I really hadn't considered, as much as I did during that trip, how important gardens and nature are to people who live in cities.
Yes.
And that we're all human beings. And I think we all benefit from that connect with nature. So it was really on a trip to Toronto a few years ago, as I'd already kind of begun the project, that essay arose out of noticing how much advantage people took of just even the smallest space to plant a beautiful pot of flowers, and that gardening really isn't about how much space you have or how large a garden you have. It's about the love that you put into what you do. So when this event occurred, I just kept being drawn back to the message of that song, which is about helping one another. And I was personally so moved, as I think most of the country, if not all the country, was by how the people of Toronto pulled together in that moment to support and nurture each other through this just horrific event that is really, the effects of it are still unfolding. So I just wanted to, offer up this song because I really wrote it as a result of a trip to Toronto.
Wonderful.
It seemed appropriate.
Excellent. Well, let's play that now. Thank you.
Thank you.
See that man giving up his seat on the bus. He doesn't know you and you don't know him, but he cares enough to let you sit. These little kindnesses mean everything in a world gone temporarily insane. These little kindnesses help me believe that we might still recover, one human to another. But only love is gonna make the difference. Only love is gonna see us through. Not more pain, not more violence and anger. We don't talk about it. I guess it's only love. See that nurse working late, overtired and underpaid. She stays with that boy till he falls asleep, cares more about him than her tired feet. These little kindnesses mean everything in a world gone temporarily insane. These little kindnesses help me believe that we might still recover, one human to another. And only love is gonna make the difference. Only love is gonna see us through. Not more pain, not more violence and anger. We don't talk about it. I guess it's only love. We are standing on the edge. All the noise is caving in. The space is where our hearts would speak.
Welcome back, everyone. That was Only Love, written and performed by our guest this evening, Linda Brooks, and part of her brand new book, Orchestra in My Garden, Lessons Learned from Digging Deep. That was beautiful, Linda. Thank you for allowing us to share that on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So going into... we have another question here.
Okay.
Daredevil writes in, Linda, when and where, a very poignant question for the song, when and where is you're going to tour? When are you going to tour?
Well, actually, right now, all the focus is just on the book because it just released
Okay.
recently. And we actually have just been talking about that and just thinking that probably it will be in the late fall, would probably be the earliest, but I'll be posting updates about that on the website.
Excellent.
So the www.orchestra.com is kind of the place to, and also on social media, I'll be posting about that on all the various sites as well. But I think that the late fall probably is realistic, just because there's a lot of book signing and book events going on at the moment, and
Perfect.
just trying to get the message out about the book. But I absolutely am eager and looking forward to that so much, to putting a show together that will encompass some of the book and maybe even have some spoken word elements integrated into the show.
Wow, that's a good
Very
idea.
cool.
Yeah.
So just kind of maybe sidewaysing into spoken words, we noticed going through the book
Yes.
that there were a lot of really cool little garden tips sprinkled throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us more about those tips. Like, how did you come up with those tips?
How did I come up with them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was really thinking about it from the perspective of, I'm not a garden expert. I'm a garden enthusiast.
Okay.
I'm really somebody that, although certainly you amass a lot of knowledge over the years from doing it. This current garden of mine is 14 years old, that I've been building for 14 years. And I really was thinking about, there are lots of experts out there, including yourselves, and I really feel that, to suit the tone of the book and the storytelling, I wanted to offer these little sort of bite-sized, appetizers or little bits of something added value for the customer, the reader of the book. And so I started thinking about, what are the sort of just very practical things that maybe aren't talked about as much in sort of the more expert.
Right. Yeah. The more how-to books, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That might be really relevant for someone who's just getting into gardening or feeling a little bit intimidated about gardening. I really want this to be, if anything, sort of like something that encourages people to try and to have the experience of what gardening brings to you, because it's really not about. The results of your labors are beautiful, and it's an added perk. But I really feel that it's the experience you gain from gardening as a person, and the challenges that you face and what you learn from those that are really the richest part of the experience. And the flowers are just like the icing on the cake.
That's right. That's
so
right.
I really wanted to add those little bits and pieces for people who are just brand new to this and would be able to relate to that type of advice maybe a little easier than they would to someone who's a little bit more experienced as a gardener.
Well, I think you, as if we loosely say we're experts, but you did a great job. So I want to just commend you. That I thought your tips were very, very thorough, very poignant.
Mm-hmm.
Very well done.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that coming from you folks. So thank you very much. I think there are the things we sometimes forget about. Just that little bit of practical advice for someone who's just starting out and sort of finding their way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I know you would agree. It's just such a wonderful outlet.
Yes.
And, and then I feel like, maybe my book helps bring them to gardening in terms of, bringing them a little closer to trying and not feeling so intimidated about it.
Yes.
And then there are so many wonderful books that can sort of take you to that next level.
Right.
Where you look for the expert advice.
Yeah. So John writes in. He wanted to share what a beautiful song he thought it was.
Thank you.
It actually brought tears to his eyes, he says, and thank you very much for sharing that song with us.
Yeah, that's
How
lovely.
lovely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. As I was listening to it while you were playing it, I was definitely becoming a little emotional as well. And it's a really interesting thing that that these songs maybe because they grew out of a place that I felt such a connection to, and they all sort of arose and held their own place in their own moment, that I'm still sort of, moved by them. And in fact, I was doing a book signing on the weekend, and performance was part of that through one of the chapter stores, and I could see a couple of people tearing up,
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought I have to look away because
Yeah.
I'm going to be
Yeah.
a mess if I don't. So,
Mhm.
but one of the most. I think that's one of the greatest compliments you can get
Oh, that's
as a
great.
musician is for someone to say that. So,
Connects.
because
Yeah.
it's a sense that we're all
Yeah,
connecting.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So as we're getting, I can't believe time is just flying on us,
It
Linda.
has.
Yeah, for sure. So we want to kind of end off with a couple questions more about the garden,
Sure.
if that's okay. And so tell us a little bit about your garden, and did you design it yourself, or has it been something you needed some outside help with?
I have, and I use the word loosely, designed it myself. I mean, it really has just evolved over the years. Initially, I think I have quite a good amount of space here, and I felt a little overwhelmed at first.
Yes.
I had big dreams, and just looking at it all at once was almost overwhelming. Where do I start, and how do I get there? And I did do it myself. I felt. I just felt that that's the way I wanted to approach
Yeah,
it.
that's
And
good.
I think it's great if you have access to or want to bring other people. I think everyone should approach it however it feels right to them.
Right,
Honestly,
for sure.
For me, I think it was something that I just kind of fell in love with, and I had gardened a bit at a previous home. And I really, when I first arrived here, there were some older perennials, and I thought, oh, great, because my older house there'd been nothing. It was newer subdivision.
Yeah.
And here I thought, oh great, there's something to work around. But really, as I kind of got past that honeymoon phase and looked a bit closer, some of those perennials had run their course.
Right.
And
So it's
so
time to start over.
starting over is hard on your back,
Yeah.
because I was pulling a lot of those old, like 30-year-old root balls out of the ground, and I did do it all myself. Actually, my boys were quite young at the time, and my husband's in an industry where he's busiest during the summer, so he's in film and TV, and they shoot during the summer primarily. So I really didn't have those strong lads yet to help me out that were around. So I just kind of figured out how to do it, and it really evolved. I tried to remind myself, and this is one of the lessons I talked about in the book, to just start small and really just focus on the enjoyment of what I was doing, and let the rest of what was to be done just kind of wait over there for its turn. And not sort of taunt me too much, because
well, that's good. Yeah.
you can just so preoccupy yourself with what isn't done that you miss out on the enjoyment of what you're accomplishing, right? So in any endeavor, gardening or anything else. So it really evolved over a long period of time, over 14 years. And each time that I thought, okay, that's it, I would inevitably, get the itch again to do another garden. So they pretty much surround my house now. There are a variety of different gardens that kind of go all the way around the house.
Excellent.
And I really love that I can, from every window and every door, see some garden. And that's really, it's sort of
Excellent.
like my outdoor art, I guess,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just as we reach the last little bit, as part of our design focus, we like to ask our guests just one really quick tip as to what you would do, or like a garden design, so like a landscape design or garden design type of thing for a guest.
Like a little tip.
Yeah.
Like something specific plants, or just a general sort of.
Whatever you think, like what it was something you've learned that has worked. We like to leave our listeners with a quick tip.
Okay, this is probably the one thing I have learned that really stuck with me. I have a little woodland area in the back of my yard, and at first I found it frustrating because the sun wasn't getting in there, and I wanted it to be something that it wasn't. And I learned to, rather than fight it, embrace those things that are already existing on your property and use them as sort of like a jumping off point for your design. So now that is one of my favorite gardens, and it's a little woodland garden where I chose to respect what was already there and choose plants that would thrive in those conditions rather than
Excellent.
trying to tear it apart and make it into something it wasn't. I let nature dictate the design.
Excellent. Well, that's a great one. So, yeah, letting nature dictate the design.
Yes.
So, you mentioned chapters. So, is your book available on Indigo Chapters?
It is. It's available through Indigo Chapters online, also through Amazon Canada
Excellent.
online, and then it's available throughout, many bookstores nationally, including the Chapters Indigo Coles.
Okay.
London
And can you
stores as well.
buy it on your website as well?
On the website, you can click. There are links at the bottom of the website
Okay.
to both the Chapters Indigo online and Amazon, so you can get a hold of it for sure quite easily.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we have good news on the person that's our listener tonight who gets to get a hold of it.
Great.
Yes. Do you want to do it now?
Yeah, we'll do it
now. So, Joanne,
Let
while
Linda
we're
enjoy.
doing our tip, we did a quick draw. And John Whitney, congratulations. We drew your name, so you have won the
that's
copy
wonderful.
of the book tonight.
Congratulations. I hope that he enjoys it.
Yeah, and he's the one who really was moved by the song. So, John, you
Yes,
get to.
I thought so.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Thank
for
you
sure.
so much. Well, John, I hope you enjoy the book very much, and you'll have that song and 21 others.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much, Linda. This has been a great show.
Thank you.
And we really did enjoy the book. And we know our listeners, we hope they go to your website, orchestrainmygarden.com.
Yes.
Thank you. Canadian, you never know if it's .ca.
No,
And
that's
so
true. Yes.
we do have listeners all over Toronto, all over the world because of the internet. And the show will also be available as a podcast. So if you didn't hear all of it, you'll be able to listen to the rest of it as a recording. So
thank you so much. I've enjoyed talking with you so much. And,
excellent.
it's been one of the most lovely sort of results of this is the opportunity to talk to other gardeners.
Yeah,
so I'm
great.
really enjoying that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks,
Lovely
Linda.
to talk to you both.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Well, that was a great topic for May.
Yes, it
Right?
was.
You know?
Orchestra in the Garden, a journey through someone else's garden and how it really enriches our lives. And
Mm-hmm.
I think as designers, we try to really do that. We're kind of artists, as Linda would say, and we like bringing joy to your spaces and enhancing them and helping you along your own journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the book is a really great one, and her tips are really, really very good. And so if our listeners have any questions, we know we're in the heart of garden season as we come up to the Canadian long weekend this weekend.
That's it.
For sure. So please, I know our show's wrapping up, but if you have questions, even after the show, you know how to reach us on our social media links. Check out downtoearth.ca with the number 2. And all my links are there. So if you have any questions, pop onto Facebook, give me a shout out and ask away with the questions that you have. And Matthew's go ahead.
Yeah, I'm at naturalaffinitydesigns.ca. You can find links to all of my things there too. You can also find a link back to Joanne's page where we have all the past episodes archived. Don't forget to also search us on your favorite podcast
Thank you,
download area. Don't forget to leave us a review as well. We love to hear what kind of stuff you liked and give us a shout out there. You can also reach us always here if you have a question in studio101@gmail.com. Right, Gary, and say hi and leave us a question.
That's right. That's right.
So just wrapping up, you said it is the May 2-4 weekend for us here in Canada, and in our area, that's the big weekend, our last average frost date. So we're all going to be excited planting. And next Monday is actually going to be a holiday Monday for us. So being May as being the big garden show, Joanne and I are going to take a holiday as...
well, not really.
Well, not
we're going to be
really, but
working.
we're both going to be working very hard and long. But we're going to repeat next week. We're going to do our May in the Garden show. So tune in next weekend. It's the big gardening weekend. Learn all the do's and don'ts, the tips and tricks for what to do May in the garden. Lots to still do. And then next week, join us again live. We'll be back in studio for June in the garden.
That's
as a
right.
whole other month is on our doorstep, believe it or not. Oh,
Yeah.
and you were gonna.
Yeah, no, that's right. So the last Monday in the month is our June in the Garden. So we definitely want to hear from you. We really do want to help you with your design dilemmas too. So even though the gardens are a little bit behind schedule, that is the one big thing I'd like to remind everybody. Your plants aren't dead. They're just behind. So be patient and get those design dilemmas into us.
Yes.
At instudio101@gmail.com.
You got it.
That's right. So we want to thank everybody for joining us down the garden path here on Reality Radio 101. And enjoy the garden, everyone.
Yes. Thank you all for tuning in. Happy Victoria Day long weekend. Enjoy.
And then Memorial Day.
And Memorial Day for the other
That's right.
side of the line.
Okay.
Have
Bye,
a great
everybody.
one.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101. All right, let's see. Mr. Lou, you talk
Check,
first.
1 2 1 2.
There's the radio god.
1 2 3 4.
And Mr. When Dave's ready.
Oh, I'm ready. I can hear you.
Okay. You're a funny guy.
What's this new green box in here?
Oh, that's
What
just
can we
for a
do with
DI when people plug in computers or stuff to go on the air.
that? Oh,
It just line levels it, a good signal, so I don't get
you don't get
yeah.
any feedback or
It's-
bullshit or anything like that.
Yeah,